Time now for Fantasy Football Today for CBS Local Sports. We're going to give you all the starts and sits you need to help you dominate your fantasy leagues in week number 4. I'm Jamey Eisenberg. That's Dave Richard. Let's get right to it with the running backs who are starting this week. And one guy stands out above the rest. That's Darrell Henderson, our start of the week here on CBSSports.com. Love the setup for Henderson. He should continue to dominate. Cam Akers not going to play for the Rams. Malcolm Brown just stay on the bench. Henderson should tear apart this Giants defense. They've been bad against the run. Henderson's been fantastic the last 2 games. Let's get 100 yards and a touchdown out of him. He's one of 3 running backs you could be looking at this week, along with Myles Gaskin and James Robinson. Love the setup for all 3 of these guys. Let's go now to the sit running backs that you have, Dave, and give us a guy that you're really avoiding, somebody who fantasy managers should truly stay away from.
I'm nervous about Mark Ingram's workload. I think he can score against Washington. I certainly think he's got a better chance of scoring than Antonio Gibson, for example. But really, what happens if Lamar Jackson takes control of the game early against Washington? That means if they're salting the game away late, it's not going to be Mark Ingram. It might not even be J.K. Dobbins. I'm worried that we might see a maximum of 10 touches from Mark Ingram in this matchup against Washington. And even if he scores, doesn't mean he's going to get you double-digit fantasy points.
All right, let's go now from the running backs to the quarterbacks. And interesting name you got here, Dave. You got the beard, Ryan Fitzpatrick, going against the Seahawks. Most people might want to shy away from that matchup, but you're saying go all in on Fitzmagic.
Jamey, he is a top 12 quarterback this week, taking on the league's worst-ranked pass defense in Seattle. They've allowed 80 yards per game more than every other team, at least 80 yards, I should say, than every other team in the National Football League. And Fitzpatrick really lit it up the last couple of games. Tons of fantasy points. I think we could see him have at least 3 touchdowns and over 300 yards in a high-scoring game against the Seahawks.
Just what you would expect in week 4 of the 2020 campaign. You're starting Ryan Fitzpatrick. You're sitting Tom Brady. No Chris Godwin. He's out dealing with that hamstring injury. And I think it's going to be tough for Brady. We saw him in 1 game without Godwin this year. 10 fantasy points in week number 2. Chargers are down a couple guys on defense. No Chris Harris, no Melvin Ingram. I don't care. I would try and stay away from Brady if you can. Not only is Ryan Fitzpatrick better, but also Joe Burrow. I think those guys have a higher ceiling than Brady this week. Let's go now from the quarterbacks to the wide receivers. And Dave said he likes Ryan Fitzpatrick. I'm all in as well. Let's go Devontae Parker and Preston Williams. Now, Parker probably seems obvious. He has a chance to blow up on a week-to-week basis, but Preston Williams scored a touchdown last week against Jacksonville. Seattle's defense abysmal against opposing wide receivers. I think both Dolphins guys should go off this week. Dave, give us a wide receiver that you're going to avoid in week number 4.
You know, I'm getting a ton of questions about Terry McLaurin because 2 of his 3 games this year have been total duds, and I think it's going to be 3 of 4. That Ravens defense was embarrassed on national TV on Monday night. Now they're going from maybe the toughest offense to defend to the easiest. Dwayne Haskins has thrown a bad pass on 27% of his throws. More than 1 out of every 4 throws is uncatchable in Washington. That's not good. And I think the coverage on McLaurin is going to be tight, which means that Haskins is going to have to go in a different direction, look for under 100 yards, look for 0 touchdowns from Terry McLaurin this week, find somebody else.
Yeah, don't look at what the Chiefs did against the Ravens. That's a different style of offense, certainly a different quarterback. All right, from the wide receivers, we go to the tight ends. Dave, give us one of these guys that you want to start.
I love what the Lions have been trying to get going with TJ Hockenson. I wish the target volume would go up, and this would be the matchup for it to happen. New Orleans has been dreadful against tight ends. Robert Tonyan, Mercedes Lewis both had touchdowns against them last week. Tight ends have had big games against New Orleans every week of the season, and I think New Orleans is going to have to deal with Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones. That leaves things open underneath for Hockenson. Look for him to see at least 8 targets, 6 catches, 70 yards, and a touchdown. He is a must-start tight end.
I would actually start him over one of these guys. One in particular stands out, and that's Darren Waller. Tough matchup against Buffalo. We saw the Patriots take Waller away last week in Buffalo when they have their healthy linebackers, which they do, Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds. We saw what it was like with those guys out in week 2 against Miami when Mike Gesicki went off. They come back in week 3, shut down Tyler Higbee. I think they'll shut down Darren Waller again. So not a guy you completely have to sit, but someone you should lower expectations for. Could be a rough time for Darren Waller. All right, there's your starts and sits at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. For Dave Richard, I'm Jamey Eisenberg. Good luck in week number 4.